is a very big challenge in all organizations. I think all of us know data privacy is a very important area. It's also a very sensitive area. And I don't think right now globally we have a very good viable solution to it.
Mm.
Now, if you look at technology or we talk about transformation, there are two very opposing forces in play right now. Number one, let's talk about big data. You need lots of data. You need a lot of data relate to user behavior, historical behavior. Best if you can the data all the way since the inception of your very first systems. Why? Because without such large scale data, you can't create insights. There's no data science analytics to be done.
Mm.
But on the other extreme, if you talk about data privacy, you need to define data archival policy, you need to have data retention, you need to ask permission for all these things for all good reasons. But these are very opposing and conflicting policies. No, most organizations I'm facing the same challenge. How do you rationalize both? When both data governance and business intelligence and data science is under my responsibility. So it is a challenge. And as I think about it, I would think that at the end of the day, the authorities and the government or the consortium or organization needs to come in and do something. Because if we leave it to each organization, we're not going to solve the entire problem.
Mm.
Why? Because we started out saying that every single individual have the right to our own personal data, which is the right thing,
Mm.
right? You must ask permission from me. But is that scalable? Honestly, I don't think so. Every
Interesting.
system that I engage with and subscribe to, they ask me the same questions. Is it yes? Is it no? And obviously I say yes as I can't do anything, right? So my simple solution, which I know it's not so simple, is that one day we might need a trusted independent body that manages all this data privacy on behalf of all of us. Someone that we can trust. If you look at financial institution, we trust the bank. We
Mm.
trust our central monetary agency in every country. We never had that right now for data yet, and I think that is something that I think the world should move to. Else we will
Okay.
always spend a lot of energy and nobody is happy with it. You see all the lawsuit between the big boys, Facebook, Google, with their
Mm.
respective jurisdiction will never go away unless some solution is found.
When I create data, I can make it informative, I can make it misinformative, and both are absolutely important. And that's where I think to choose point, who is the arbitrator here? Who's going to create a framework globally
Mm.
to organize this so that there is a structured way of creating and manipulating and using of this data. Absolutely.
A lot of countries are establishing different levels of privacy during the pandemic, different rules, regulations. So this is it's crazy. So I think technology is exactly for that. It's try to it should be in charge of covering all the gaps and customizations that the more advanced societies are asking for. So I think that's the role of exactly of technologies is try to allow our differences, but living together with some standards for sure, but cooperating and with the minimum agreements in our collaboration.
Let me give you two different domains or approach. Maybe the first one is from business. As Harsha said before, just at the beginning of this conversation, data is present in every layer, right? So it is important to understand we have different layers because there is one layer collecting the data, there is one layer to store data, then there are layers to manipulate the data, to understand the data, to present the data, and then creating new data. And in all this data also, you may know that more than 80% is noise, okay? It's data you will never use or data you will never, or data is not, just correct, okay? So just to give you an example, imagine like election day in the United States, there's a lot of data, there is good data, there is fake data, anyway, it is data. So as an opportunity, as a business and working, we need to understand every layer, okay? And there are opportunities in every layer. Alberto before, he mentioned the Internet of Things, that's the collection, okay, by example. Now there's a huge opportunity there, and you know, we need to understand there. Now, let's move to the second approach, which is the data protection. Let me give you an example once again. Imagine you just walk in a sidewalk in a city, you want to get into a restaurant, you just get into the restaurant and you know, start using the services, right? Now, if we go digital, we have an absolutely different situation, because in the restaurant, you don't have to check for every permit. You don't have to check if the, you know, the restaurant is compliance with the town hall, with the health department, etc. You don't go ask, you know, in the kitchen how it's working. You don't audit the kitchen. But in the digital, you have to do everything. Okay, as a person in front of an application or in front of a website, you have to deal with everything, right? So we are working on with different governments, especially in the American continent, to get the government involved in this process, okay? Because this is so important and is crucial, okay? Just as Sean mentioned, it needs to be scalable, right? So we cannot have every person dealing with every company and every service and every product. And imagine with every IoT that will be created in the next years. So we will need also to go working by layers. And there will be layers that will need to be acceptable from the government, and that's it. And then there will be the customer, you know, working with the layer just with the product, specifically with the product, and not, you know, verifying everything on every layer. Once again, I'm speaking not only by me, I'm speaking for my children, and I'm speaking for my parents, okay? Different needs, different understanding, okay? And different products and solutions that they are buying. So, you know, two approaches, the business and opportunities, then the whole regulation in that.
Just add one more thing here as an example, if not as a solution. I was talking to a couple of senior experts into healthcare industry, and to make a point, as we hear a lot about 5G use cases in telehealth and remote surgeries and sort of things. But imagine, back to the same point, one is technical part of the data sharing, that how the data which comes from the telemedicine equipment to the remote surgery, and then 5G telcos exchanging the data from, let's say, from London to Singapore or maybe Bangladesh. But the second part is data privacy, that how the regulations in Bangladesh works in conjunction with the regulations in London, for example, right? So here is a surgeon who can actually technically do the remote surgery if everything goes well technically. But in case, unfortunately, something goes wrong, now how we should handle the situation, which laws and which regulation we got to follow now. Is a UK law or a Bangladesh law, or maybe some sort of international law, which we kind of spoke about. Maybe there have to be some big organization who will basically orchestrate these kind of challenges.
Yeah, Josh, can I add something here?
Sure.
I want to give you another perspective, right? Because what I heard from Shu and CK, Harsha, and Marlon, it is, in fact, it is a problem, right? It is a problem, needs to be solved. Privacy, it is very important. This needs to be regulated. I do agree. There's a need for a centralized, organization that deals with that. But I wanted you to give you another point of view, because for some cases, a decentralized kind of solution, it is also fit for purpose, right? So you have an example with the contact tracing kind of applications. Yeah, Trace Together, for instance, in Singapore and others around the globe, right? So the information in those applications, which are gathering not your location, but the contacts that you've made over time using Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff, it is anonymized already, It is anonymous. No need for privacy concerns, right? But even that is that maintains that privacy, it gives you insight, right? So you know, you don't know where people have been, right? But you get to know who they have been in contact with. So there are decentralized solutions that get rid of this regulation and centralized kind of problem that technology provides us in order to fulfill those use cases. Blockchain is another example.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those instances where technology is far ahead of any legislation or any governing framework. As you can see in all the hearings, in the government hearings, right, that there is at least 10, 20 years of lag between how we want to construct it and how we want to use it. I think they will catch up, but then you'll have a next phase problem of what it is. There is absolutely a fight for control. They will push as far as possible so that the legislation, is not as controlled as we want. But it will be a very interesting topic. As soon as you include information technology with biotechnology, my information, your information, everybody's information, it's a wonderland. You don't know which rabbit hole is going to fall into, and have your own world that you create. So it'll be very interesting to see going forward.
In 2020, we were supposed to be having autonomous vehicles all over the place and flying taxis, hopefully, but we don't see them yet.
Yeah.
Technical challenges aside, even I think the regulatory part, we're not sure how those autonomous vehicles, if they come on the road, they will have to orchestrate. So it'll be interesting to see how this problem will be addressed, and some of the example like Alberto mentioned about decentralized solution, randomized solutions, or maybe the convergence of now blockchain and IoT come together to potentially solve some of those challenges.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think what Marlon had shared earlier was very, I think it's a very good example how the authorities to come in and to assist the enablement of the transformation, and we need more of that, because as I see now, what is happening is a bit of cat and mouse game, right? The more powerful, the more data that some of the big boys are gathering, then they add on more legislation, and that's not good if you look at it, right? If truly we believe digital transformation and the whole convergence is for the good for humankind, even though I know that's subjective, then we should come in more, and instead of just adding more legislation, look at more enablement. At the same time, protect the citizens, and there are many ways to do it. Come to the table and discuss. I think if we see more of such effort, I think the future will be at least more hopeful to solve this problem once and for all.
If you give me just 1 minute, I explain what I'm doing with the lawmakers in the Americas continent, the whole continent. And the first thing we're doing is, it is true, legislation is always behind technology, and it will always be, right? Because technology is creating, okay? And then there is the people, the population, seeing what is happening and what is the impact of that technology in order to legislate, right? So, and the second is, most of the people, they don't understand technology. I mean, you can be a fantastic user of technology, but that it doesn't mean you understand the technology and you understand the impact of technology, right? So what I'm doing is working on those two things. The first one is teaching these people, the lawmakers, okay, the parliaments, and working with them. So helping them understand the technology and the impact of technology. The second is bringing companies like Jetronics, like consulting companies and vendors, and bringing these people to work together with the lawmakers, okay? Because these technology companies, they know what is happening, and they know what is happening next, because we are creating, right, the future. And so working together is giving them the opportunity to understand the impact and what is happening, right? So as an example, the last month, there was Colombia and Mexico creating a new law, okay? And they were just doing the draft and they bring it to a think tank we have together with companies like yours, and we discuss it, open it, because we cannot just rely on politicians. We have note, right? We cannot just give this job and just wait for the politicians to understand it. This is together, and we have to work it together. It's not a one-day job, right? It's gonna take us maybe 1 year or 2 years in order to be confident on this kind of job, but I think it's the right way to go, right? The first one is, understanding technology and the impact of technology and working together with the private company and especially with vendors and consultancy firms.
Good to hear that. Thanks for sharing.